We're back.
We're back.
So this day we speak about Law 41 from the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, which is avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. Law 41. What happens first always appears to be better and more original than what comes after. If you succeed a great man or have a famous parent, you will have to accomplish double their achievements to outshine them. Do not get lost in their shadow or stuck in a past not of your own making. Establish your own name and identity by changing course, slay the overbearing father, disparage his legacy, and gain power by shining in your own way.
Mhm.
So,
Wow.
Law 41 is avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. And it's interesting that we're a father and a son podcast
Uh-huh.
and team. And this is, he, Robert Greene uses examples of fathers and sons, historical, that some of them don't get along and some of them become overbearing and whatnot. But I thought it's interesting because this is kind of in our lane.
Right.
um what are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting that he says, slay the overbearing father. Yeah. And we were preview to, I was just telling you before the podcast, in our family, there was a situation, not in our immediate family, but they're still part of the family, and where there was a particular father that um, every time there was some kind of competition with his son, he would want to win all the time. And he did win all the time. And I didn't know there was any issues or anything like that until I got older and I realized that the son got older and there was a great deal of resentment for the father. And inevitably, as we get older, um, at one point in our lives, we're going to lose, because if the son's growing up, they're getting stronger. They're no longer as young as they were. The father's getting older. And there's going to come a point at midline, you
Yeah.
know? And so if you have a situation like that where everything is a competition, I think that's a problem.
And when you told me that, I asked you, did you ever let us win
Hmm.
your kids?
And the answer is yes.
You think so?
Oh, for sure.
Because
Well,
I
look,
remember it being very competitive when we were playing
well, it was
sports and
very competitive, but what you were,
chess. You would never let us win in chess. And I remember one time I beat you, and it was like, and I've only, it's a handful of times that I can count that I beat you in chess.
mhm.
But
I always try, well, see, that's,
the victory is sweeter if it was merited.
yeah.
If you let your kid win,
So when I say I let you guys win, I'm talking about when you were kids. I'm not talking about when you became men.
teenagers,
Yeah,
older.
yeah, because um, I always wanted to bring out, let's say, or that was the idea, the best, right? So I was always very competitive. So I would force you to be competitive. But um, it, it wasn't this life or death situation where I needed to win, you know? And so if you guys have won or I took a shot,
Oh, I see.
that was wrong for basketball because we were very competitive with basketball, remember?
Yeah.
And your brother and stuff like that. You know, I admired your wins as much as anything else. And so
So
if you let it get out of hand, it can be a problem. It
yeah,
really
it
can.
it was maybe the father couldn't, um, uh, not admit, but couldn't take a loss
Yeah.
from his son. That it sounds like that was the situation. It was like
Right.
it's not like I'm gonna let you win or I'm just gonna be competitive with you. It's like I can't lose.
Yeah, and when we weren't that close, but we were family, and so when I became aware of the issue, it was too late. There was a great deal of animosity from the son to the father,
Wow.
and I could tell that it definitely drove a wedge between them. That relationship was not a healthy one.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that the mom blamed the dad
Yeah.
because
Oh, okay.
I was older now. I had grown older, and And because of my travels, I was near them more. I had traveled out of California, so I was near them more, and uh, I I was preview to some very heavy duty fighting,
Yeah.
and it was unfortunate. It was sad, and I was way young. I was in my early 20s, and I was trying to figure out how to unite them, and I didn't have the knowledge to give
It's a
advice at that time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
It is.
Um,
And it can happen anywhere. You can
it
do it in business.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a father. It's a symbol of, right, when he says, avoid filling a great man's shoes, right?
Right.
Avoid stepping into a great man's shoes. It doesn't have to necessarily be your dad. But I thought it was interesting because we work together,
Yes. For a long time.
and I have always thought, yeah, for a long time. Yeah. I think well, growing up, you had us involved in the business, but then we went, about, what was it, 11 years ago or something, and we went and we opened up a business and
In 2010.
did it together. And so,
That was
so
14 years ago.
14 years ago, then
Yeah.
we went I went my own way, you went yours, and then now we're in business
Here
again.
we go. Again.
But I
But I
think
don't
it's
see us as a competition. I see us as a synergistic relationship where your growth is my growth. Like I say all the time, I'm on the internet way too much, and there's one guy in there that says, the only man on this earth that's going to be happy for your success is going to be your father.
not all fathers.
But that's what the quote says.
Yeah.
There's only one man on this earth that is going to be happy for your success, and that man is that man, it's just your father. That's it. No one else is going to be happy for your success.
Well, Robert Greene uses the example of King Philip of Macedonia, which was the
Correct.
father of Alexander the Great,
Right.
who was not, he was jealous
Right.
of the success that and the courage that Alexander the Great had. Alexander the Great, it seemed like he really wanted to break away from what the father had accomplished, which he had accomplished a lot. And I really, for me, the story of the horse that
Yeah.
Alexander the Great was able to tame,
Bucephalus.
Bucephalus, that story where, they bring this wild horse,
Hmm.
they can't tame it in front of the king, and then Alexander the Great says, what a shame, right? You're letting that horse
Go.
go, and then the father says, okay, he brings the horse back, you tame it, and sure, to teach him a lesson. He was expecting that Alexander the Great would fall, get hurt, and learn.
Expecting and desiring it.
That's
He wanted him to take a fall
and
so
make an
that he could
example.
show the world, hey, make an example of you.
But Alexander the Great is able to tame that horse,
That's right.
and Robert Greene even says that he's able to ride it at full stride, and he ends up taking that horse all the way into India in terms of his conquers.
Can you imagine?
So that's
What
the
a
horse. He,
symbolism,
what was the name of it?
huh? Bucephalus.
Bucephalus. So there was an issue there, uh, between the father and the son, and I, I, I like how Robert Greene even says the father, quote unquote, could even be your past. It doesn't have to be your actual dad, right? It could be your past accomplishments that are now holding you back. One thing, you talked about us being in business together and we're more synergistic and partnership. But there is one thing that's very present to me, and I bring it up to you many times, is
Hmm.
that if you were 33, would you take that risk? And you usually are pretty transparent and say, yeah, I would. But you're not taking that risk now.
No.
So what happens is that Robert Greene shows examples that when you accomplish something, you begin to sit on your laurels. I'm not saying you're doing
No,
that.
no, I understand.
You begin to become complacent. You quit taking those risks that you did initially because you had nothing. You were starting at zero.
Hmm.
And it takes me back to, in my previous career, I would sit one-on-one with many, many different business owners doing financial services, life insurance, investments. And there was this one gentleman in particular who built an empire. And I asked him, "Oh, how are you going to pass this to your children, or your children are involved in your business?" And he says, "Yeah, they are, but it's not the same." And I asked him, "Oh, what do you think that is? That you have all this drive?
Why?
Yeah, why?
Uh-huh.
You have this drive, but your kids, you're saying, don't have it." He told me in Spanish, la necesidad, necessity.
Oh,
So when he came to this country, it was necessity initially that was his driving force. I personally believe that necessity gets you to a certain point, but then he had to drive beyond that because he got to a point where maybe it wasn't necessity anymore, but it's already who you are. So you keep building. He didn't become complacent and he kept building. But the children don't have that. And so what Robert Greene says is that if you are one of these people who have an inheritance, it would be silly to throw it away, but psychologically you need to start at ground zero. I don't know how feasible that is, but the reason that the people before you were able to build what they built was because they were at ground zero, necessity.
they had nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose, only to gain.
Right.
You come in now, and now have inherited whatever you've inherited, and now you just want to preserve it. You don't want to lose it because you didn't make it. What he's saying is, Robert Greene, you need to psychologically take yourself to ground zero.
Super cool.
I don't know how real that is.
Well, being aware of the situation, just like you explained it beautifully, it's part of it. Because now you are aware of the fact that, unbeknownst to you or subconsciously to you, you may not be taking certain risks because you want to protect whatever it is that has been handed down to you. And I think that's human nature. And I think that in order to fight that, the first thing you need to do is be aware of it and then maybe take some steps to try to implement some degree of action, because taking action is the most important thing. But while you were talking, I wrote it down, I put a start on it. It says, do not grow fat and lazy in your prosperity. So, as you prosper, you grow fat and lazy and you don't want to take the risks that you took when you were younger.
When you had nothing to lose.
Right. And that's understandable to a certain extent too.
Like you said, it's human nature.
It is.
Yeah.
For example, you are moving forward into our business, you are a lot more aggressive than I am. And this, by the way, the books are not going to tell you this, folks, our subscribers and our friends that are listening to us. You don't get this from the books. Because, for example, I'm 65 and my risk tolerance, I think it's pretty high for a 65-year-old. But then I have a wife, and the risk tolerance for that wife of mine is lower. So you have to make
Don't
these.
blame your wife for a low risk.
No, but
Yeah, I hear
like you
you.
and I have come
It's
across these situations where, okay, well, wait a minute, this is our business.
right, right. You have to.
Her opinion should not affect our business.
Well, I think,
And these are the things that when you're in business with family come up,
sure,
and the way to resolve them, folks, is to talk about it.
absolutely. I think
Let it all out.
awareness is like you said, one thing.
Awareness.
Um, and like when I asked you, if you were my age, would you have done this risk? Would you have taken this step? The answer is yes. You say it, but you're not willing to do it now, which is understandable. And I think that constantly being present, because we are business partners, also is uh, is very important because it allows for, if I didn't know that and I wasn't aware of that, maybe I would be very upset hey, we didn't do this or that, we didn't make that move, why didn't we do that, why aren't you on board with that, whatever, right? But since I'm very clear on that and I understand that, and I don't know who says it, I believe it was Cardone, because I used to listen to him a lot more
Okay.
before, and he said, um, careful who you take advice from and what stage in their life they are when they're giving you that advice.
Oh,
Because you have to assess that. It's like, okay, I just got advice. I asked somebody, I asked a friend of ours that owned several businesses, restaurants, cafes, and I asked him, hey, one day, I told him one day I would love to have a coffee shop or something. What do you think? Don't do it, he told me. But I also have to look at the person, their experiences, the age they're at, right?
yeah.
You have to assess that as well. If I just took that and took that as what is it? Like the scripture. You run with that without taking into account all the other things as well. Then I think you're doing yourself a disservice. You have to analyze where the advice is coming from.
For sure. And I've made a tremendous amount of mistakes in my life. And you learn from your mistakes. The other day, I was listening to a very famous actor. I forget his name right now, but he was saying, hey, listen, you don't learn anything from success. Where you really truly learn is from the mistakes you make.
Hmm.
He was saying that. And he was uh, like hands 100% believing what he was saying. You only learn from your mistakes. A success doesn't teach you anything.
Yeah.
That's what he said, but it was an interesting comment.
Yeah.
But I remember um, I was in my 20s and an opportunity came up, and I brought this idea to this gentleman that I respected a lot. This particular gentleman was like 16 or years older than me, maybe 17 years older than me, and was in a completely different situation. And he said, "Oh, I would never buy that." And I said, "Okay." And I took his advice and let that opportunity go by. And I'm here today to tell you that as I look back, I believe it was a mistake. Okay. Now, I did other things.
Sure.
Other opportunities came by because I was always looking for a way to create more and whatever. So I did other things. So the my wife's reply to that is, look, if you had done that, you wouldn't have been able to do this. And you know,
Yeah. You
there
gotta.
are consequences to every decision that we take.
Right. Um, you know, Going back to this being about power,
Yeah.
because this whole idea about, he actually says what disparage, uh, he actually says, slay the overbearing father,
Yeah.
disparage his legacy, gain power by shining in your own way. And so he says Robert Greene I mean, Alexander the Great never stopped because he felt that first off, he didn't want to be cast like his father. He didn't want to fall into the shadow. And he also didn't want to fall into the shadow of his past, which was the father, quote unquote. And this has to do with power. And that's why Alexander the Great is known today as one of the greatest conquerors
Well, he
in
conquered Persia. That in it by itself would have set him in the history books,
because his father never did that.
right?
Yeah.
And then he kept on
And
going
then
to
he kept
India.
going. So, but it doesn't talk about happiness. It doesn't talk about real life. Because, like you brought up, your risk tolerance, your wife's risk tolerance, those are real life scenarios.
Right.
Robert Greene doesn't
You don't
care.
get that in the
Well, he
books.
doesn't care about that. He's
Well,
talking
oh,
about
okay.
power.
All right. I buy it. I
But I like that you bring it up because
Okay.
these are things that people are actually going to
Well, I
face.
mean, to what extent do you sacrifice your family?
Well,
for power and wealth.
I I mean,
Because everything has a give and take.
that's not in the 48 laws of power.
Well, okay. All right,
That's
then let me take a step back and
no, no,
we're
no.
we're doing power moves.
No,
So,
but I like that you bring it up because each person listening to this, I think this is a nice like guiding, but it's not, this is not a Bible per se.
you mean the 48 laws?
Yeah, even though the new edition, I don't know if you've seen it. Robert Greene made the pages gold leaf gold,
Oh,
and half of the book is Machiavelli's face and half of it is Robert Greene's
I want to
face.
buy that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. That's the it looks like a Bible. It's leather, black leather on the outside. So, but you're talking real life, and I think it's important to also bring that aspect in, and that's why we share our experiences about a father and son, the challenges we have. Sometimes we look at a situation, a deal, an opportunity, and you're looking at it from your perspective, 65 years old. I'm
Right,
looking at it from mine, 33. You're almost double my age.
for sure.
But so I think it's important to note that he's just talking about gaining power,
Right.
and he doesn't care about other
Anything else?
people, relationships. Are you happy in life? And I think that's important for everybody listening, and then for ourselves. Is that the life we want to live? Because I don't necessarily agree 100% with this law, but in terms of gaining power, I guess I can agree 100%. But I don't know that I want to live my life that way,
Well,
and I think that's why you bring that up.
the only reason why, um, if it was up to Alexander, he would have gone through India.
Yeah,
The only thing that stopped him is because his soldiers were already,
disgruntled.
well, disgruntled, and they had been fighting for, I don't know, a decade or more, and they were tired. They wanted to go back to
Yeah.
their homes, they wanted, they had reached their limit. And that's the only reason, because if it was up to Alexander, he would have continued. He's just like, he kind of reminds me like a modern day kind of like Steve Jobs. If you've read the book, it proclaims Steve Jobs as not the nicest guy in the world. He had a goal and people working towards that goal and nothing else mattered,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
When I was doing some reading, I saw somebody put a comment. I mean, on this was on YouTube, saying that this reminds them of the CEO that came after Steve Jobs. He stepped into a great man's shoes in terms of his name is Cook. I don't know his first name,
Hmm.
but it could be at work, like you said. It could be different situations. Um, this is a quote from the book: "Privileges of birth are impediments to power."
Wow.
I was talking with my friend the other day who grew up and his family had a business and he grew up in the business as well. And him and I were sharing, a lot of people think and have thought, oh, your family has a business, you had it easy. And him and I were just bouncing back. He's like, no, they they treated us harder than any employee. They expected more of us than any employee. And it's because in and I believe you guys did that
For
as well
sure.
with us,
For sure.
is that you needed to set a precedent, an example to the other employees, the other team members, that hey, just because you're the son
Oh, yeah.
or the daughter or the child of the owner, you don't get those special privileges. But Robert Greene says privileges of birth are impediments to power.
So it's interesting that you bring that up because I remember I did an interview with someone and they were very qualified and I wanted that person to start working in our agency and I offered that person the job and he turned me down. And the reason why he turned me down was because he said, "Well, you have family in the business and I will never be able to surpass your family. Your family is always going to get, you know,
Promotion.
the promotion over us." And right there and then I told him, "No, I treat my family members in a different scale. They're held to a higher standard. They have to do better than anybody else. The family members are not going to get." a promotion because they're family.
Hmm.
They may get a promotion because they've earned it or it's warranted through the hard labor, through the devotion. But if there's another employee that shows better aptitude, better skills, and so forth, that person is going to get that promotion. And the proof is in the pudding. My office manager of today, uh, um, she's not a blood relative. I mean, she's like family now because she's been with us for a long time and she's um, she's got our back. And to find people like that, it's one in a million. So
Hmm.
I consider her like family, but she's not a blood relative.
Right.
And she became my office manager when I had people that were family
Family
members in the
in
business.
the business.
And I
Correct.
didn't say, "Oh, no, no, you're not going to be enough." And I gave her that title.
Right.
And to her credit, she didn't want it.
Mm.
She said, "I don't want to be labeled an office manager." And I said, "You're going to be labeled an office manager because you have all it takes to be an office manager. And
Yeah.
in my absence, someone's going to want to talk to someone in authority.
Sure.
And that person is going to be you." And she's been my office manager for years and years and years
Yeah.
and done an exceptional job.
Very cool.
But she's not blood related.
Right. And so that's very important to
But that guy
in a
didn't come
business.
with us. He didn't take my job.
Yeah. So,
Let me say one
those
last thing.
are,
He was coming from an experience of a previous business where it was a husband and wife that owned it, and they were foreigners, so they spoke another language that he didn't, and he had a really negative experience.
yeah, it sounds like he came with
So,
baggage.
well,
Um, Here's another example that I thought of. Actually, the first one that I thought of but I try to bring examples that we've lived, right? But examples in life that I've seen is Julio Iglesias and Enrique Iglesias.
wow. I don't think they get along, right?
Eh, I don't know how much of that is true and gossip, whatever. It doesn't seem like they have the closest relationship, but Enrique Iglesias, my opinion, will never achieve what the father, Julio Iglesias, the singer, was able to achieve.
Okay. I agree with that statement. But do you think there's a little of melancholy there that are privy to all his boleros and love songs and stuff like that, and we grew up with Julio Iglesias and less contact with Enrique, let's say? I mean, he's done a lot of big things too.
He's done a lot of big things. Um,
Maybe the younger generation would have a different opinion than you because they haven't been
I've
privy to.
seen both in concert. I'll tell you that.
Okay,
So I've listened to both their music. Yes, I grew up hearing Julio Iglesias because you had it, grandma would have it every me playing. But I also heard a lot of Enrique Iglesias just because I grew up in that era in
okay.
the 90s, early 2000s.
But your opinion is that,
I've been to both, and I think that Enrique Iglesias, the son, will never achieve what the father was able to achieve. And I think part of it is because of the success of the father. And that's what Robert Greene is saying. You're under a shadow always. You're being measured. You're always being compared to your father, because your father was famous. And now he's saying slay the father, disparage their legacy. You can't with Julio Iglesias. I mean, the I was listening to an interview of his prepping for this. It was the 75th album of Julio Iglesias, which was Divorcio. It was the 75th album of his.
okay, that's a very good album.
Um, and what year did Divorcio come out? Let's
Phew.
look this up.
I mean, in the 90s or something like that, right?
It came out in the year 2003.
Okay, 2003.
So he's being interviewed later, right? But he had already done 75 albums by 2003. And his albums were hits.
All of them.
uh,
And
Almost.
sold
So
well.
anyways, what I'm saying, and then and Julio
You could
Iglesias,
argue it was a different world.
It was a different world, but he had something that the son doesn't have.
Okay.
So, anyways, I just thought that was an interesting example because, in my opinion, I'm doing what exactly what Robert Greene is saying people will do. They're gonna compare you to your father, and you have to break away. Here's another example I just thought of right now: Vicente Fernandez,
Mm.
Alejandro Fernandez, the son. I don't care what you case you try and make. I mean, it's gonna be really hard to argue that the son, Alejandro Fernandez, is a better artist than the father. Now we're talking art, and that's subjective, and I get it. But you can talk album sales, you can talk, fame, you can talk
Well,
what the
first of all,
achievements are.
it, okay. There, Alejandro Fernandez and both Enrique Iglesias have done huge things,
No doubt about it.
right? But there is no way that Alejandro Fernandez will ever be able to match his father. His father had a unique voice. Alejandro doesn't have that voice. I don't think. I hope we don't get beat up on this,
Well, what do
because
you
there's a
guys
lot.
think?
Yeah, you guys,
What do
this
you
is
guys think?
just our opinions. And so, but
Well,
Vicente
again,
Fernandez,
we're talking art,
art.
music,
Yeah,
and it's hard because it's our opinion on it. And you're right, there's a lot of things that go with that. But Robert Greene uses the example of Pablo Picasso. He wanted to break away every single time from his previous success in terms of the way he painted. So
right.
he would draw these, I mean, they were super, I don't know if it's called abstract. I'm not sure. I'm not
Yeah, yeah.
into art that much. But he was completely breaking away from the previous mold he had. So these guys, Alejandro Fernandez tried to do somewhat ranchera, somewhat like the father. And he wasn't able to in the same way. He was good. He has a great voice, but he's not the dad because the
Oh, no,
dad
no.
did it first.
Oh,
And that's what he's saying that it's actually in the law. He opens up with what happens first.
oh,
Always appears better and more original than what comes after.
right. Well, look, if you look at the movie with Jackie Chan, what is it?
Rush Hour.
Rush Hour. The first Rush Hour,
There you go.
I think I saw it like 10 times. And when it came out, it was so funny. I just saw it and saw it. I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
The rest of them, eh, they're all right. I'll see them, but it wasn't like the first one.
There are some movies that are best to be left as a one without a sequel. The only movie that comes to the top of my mind right now, and again, if people think there's more examples, the only movie that comes to the top of my leave a comment is The Godfather 2. Because I
Okay.
think The Godfather 2 for Coppola, I believe
Uh,
Francis Ford Coppola,
uh-huh.
who they were able to share a completely different story because they took you back in time with Robert De Niro.
I think that was brilliant.
So it didn't feel so much like a sequel. It felt like, oh,
Continuation kind of
yeah,
thing.
continuation.
Smooth.
Yeah, it was going back and forth between the present and then the story of the past. So I think that was brilliant. That's the only one that I could say
Plus, we love mobster
we
movies.
love the
So,
Godfather movies. But other than the Godfather 2, what's another sequel that, again, this is art, it's very subjective, but it's hard to
yeah,
beat your previous best.
right. But you're right when you're talking about power moves and getting back to the laws, you know, it's straightforward.
Yeah.
You gotta slaying the previous one and
Yep.
create your own path. Go for it.
Yep.
There's nothing, subjective about it,
No. Um
No, and he says it.
the
You grow fat and lazy in your own prosperity.
we'll close up, but there were a couple other things I just wanted to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
The father, quote unquote, is can be symbolic, as we said, to your previous self and accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to recreate yourself, which ties into Law 25. Law 25 is recreate yourself. So if you haven't seen Law 25, check it out because
I
we
love that law.
reviewed that one.
I
That's one
love
of
it.
our favorite
I
laws.
live that law.
You live that law,
I want to learn something new every day, recreate myself.
and it goes hand in hand with Law 41, which is if you had a previous best, you have to find a way to recreate yourself, like Pablo Picasso. And then going a little bit against what Robert Greene is saying here, there are examples. Uh, I think I thought of two where the father is able to help the son to a certain extent.
Well, that's the idea.
Yeah,
If there's a father and son team out there, the one advice that I could give the father as a father is rejoice in the success of the son.
yeah,
Don't take it like it's a competition. And at the same time, compete, but
sure.
be happy if you lose. If your son puts one over you, um, tell him about it. Hey, this was great. This was a brilliant idea. I really love this. How'd you come up with this idea? Teach me how you did this. Because inevitably, you know, the teacher somewhere along the line becomes the student.
Yeah,
And being a father, you're older than your son by nature. And so you're going to have some years of experience ahead of him. And that's a plus for you. But eventually, depending on the kind of son you have or daughter, it's father, daughter, mother, daughter. This is what we're talking about. And don't be afraid to work with each other. Don't be afraid to start a company with each other. Because the key to success in all of this is going to be two factors. Number one is going to be communication, and number two is going to be respect. And as long as you keep respect and communication well alive between a mother and a daughter in their own business and a father and a son in their own business or any other family member, as long as you keep communication and respect well alive, it will run well.
I believe it.
I, hands down.
To close, any examples of sons that had a famous father that were able to achieve also greatness? I think of art actors. Apparently, Robert Downey Jr.'s father was very famous. You have Sheen, Martin Sheen, and Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen is extremely famous. The father was also very famous. Um,
Downey Jr. by far has exceeded, I think, his father's.
and his father apparently was very famous back in the day.
Yeah, but
Sutherland, Donald Sutherland, Kiefer Sutherland.
yeah,
Um, who's the Spartacus guy? It's
Spartacus.
Kirk
Oh, Kirk Douglas.
Michael Douglas. I mean, Kirk Douglas,
Oh,
super famous. That was before my time, but I even know Kirk Douglas. Michael Douglas. Look at what Michael Douglas has
right,
done.
right.
So there are examples of the children who were able to still achieve greatness in terms of, let's say, movies, even though the father or the mother had accomplished so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Kirk Douglas, man. Wow. I mean, and I like Michael Douglas too. He's done a lot of good stuff. But see, then you have this melancholy factor
Yeah,
that comes into play because I used to watch Kirk Douglas movies with my dad,
yeah.
and I watched Michael Douglas movies with somebody else.
Yeah, but you can't deny that what Michael Douglas has
You're right.
achieved, you
You're
know.
right. But my vote goes for Kirk Douglas.
Really?
Yeah, for no doubt. And
Yeah.
and yeah, you're right. You're right.
I
But I
mean,
I used to watch movies with my old man, Spartacus and stuff like that. And so that leans me in another direction. And then I deviate from the power moves because it's not just power move. I'm letting my
right,
sentimentality come into play to
right.
pick my choice.
Yeah.
And it's
But the,
but um the minute it becomes a competition, Mike, if there's a competition, where the father wants to be on top and first and this
Yeah,
and that. And when the father's right, he doesn't let it go and he beats it to a pulp and
it's
this
not
and
good.
that. That's not, that won't be good.
It's not healthy.
It's not healthy, not even if you weren't related.
Yeah.
You got something going on that you need to come to terms with.
Look, the other day I sent you a video, or you sent me a video of and my uncle of Andrea Bocelli and his son Matteo Bocelli. You know, he's the father. Psh, Andrea Bocelli has to be the most angelic voice of our time.
Yeah.
And then the son is also very good, and the father's trying to help bring the son up. It doesn't feel competitive in that nature.
No, you can see the father's rejoice
Yeah.
in hearing his son. The video I sent you, he's right next to him. Of course, he's got his eyes closed, but he's got this big old smile and he's singing along quietly. He's like maybe, he's just saying the words while his son is actually singing them. And
Oh,
there's a great deal of pride,
yeah.
and I think that's a
That's
healthy relationship.
yes, which is going against Robert Greene here, but we also have our opinions on it.
Of
You know, we
course.
don't agree with everything that
Yeah.
is in these laws, and that's why.
I had one of our subscribers tell me, why do you go over the book? I can buy the book. I don't need you guys to go over the laws. And I say, well, if you listen to the podcast, we bring a lot of personal. I didn't take it bad. Okay. This is a very good man. I like him. And, he was giving me pointers on how to improve our podcast.
We're always trying to improve.
We're always trying, and I was listening to him, and he says, I can go by. What he said was, I can go by the book. I don't
Yeah.
need you guys to explain the laws to me. And I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. The only difference is that we bring some of our life felt experiences into it,
Right.
and we have a perspective from a 65-year-old and a 33-year-old, which is different eyeglasses altogether.
Yeah, because
And it
even
may give somebody out there a different point of view, motivate them to do something that maybe they weren't motivated to do before, and that's all we want.
yeah, and we enjoy this,
Right.
and it's good to. I personally love history. I know you love history,
Yeah.
and I like to hear the historical. And I think it's important that people listening that don't read the book, because some people, I've had other people comment on our podcast and say, I'm not going to read the book. So I'm glad you go over some of the things of the book, because I'm not going to read the book. It doesn't interest me to read the book, but it interests me to hear your take on the book.
Okay. Well, that's nice.
Not
Thank you.
not everybody is going
Right.
to sit down and read this book, which, by the way, the intro says you will look at everything differently in life.
Right. It's a
Are
warning.
you sure you want to read this book?
Right.
Because if you are happy the way you are, you may not want to read this. Close the book right now.
Right.
Something along those lines.
And let me just say, to stay with the law, MacArthur,
Yeah.
okay, when I think he became general, he took over or whatever to continue with
World War II.
yeah. Um, some of the top generals came up to him and said, "Hey, listen, we have some previous precedents that have been written down, and here's one of the almanacs," and it was a book. And MacArthur said to them, "How many books of these are?" And they said, "There are a total of six, and they're exactly the same. These are the presidents that have been successful for us before."
The war tactics.
Yeah, the war tactics. And MacArthur said, "Okay, take all of them and burn them," because he said, "I will not be bound by a previous president. I will make my decisions by analyzing the situations and on the spur of the moment." So this is part of the law too,
Yes.
where he said, "Hey, you know what? These guys were successful. There's these six books with all these war tactics and presidents. I don't want to see them." That's kind of going, you know, the other extreme, right? And look
Yeah.
at MacArthur, one of the biggest generals ever, right? So this is part of the law. This Robert Greene cites this also.
Yep.
So I just wanted to say that before we close, so we stay, you know,
True.
true to the law.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for listening.
Yes, thank you.
Like, subscribe, leave a comment. We really read and appreciate the comments.
Share it with your family members. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and see
Almost
what
there.
happens. Almost there.
Thank you.